Updating tonight's top stories, hot button issues dominate talks between the Xi Jinping and Joe Biden administrations, with both stressing a responsibility to set what they called guardrails against conflict. The Taiwanese public are said to be pleased with the outcome of the summit, saying it will help ease tensions between the mainland and the island. And for a closer look, Robert Daly, director of the Kissinger Institute on China and the United States at the Wilson Center, joins us. Mr. Daly, thanks for your time this evening. Firstly, a show of friendship at these talks. The two leaders do have a bit of history, but how much has really been achieved?
Both leaders set very low expectations for this meeting and then proceeded to meet those expectations. So they got together. That is far better than not speaking. They built a small foundation for dialogue and for possible cooperation in Glasgow. But I think that last night, each side clearly, again, expressed its viewpoints, but no real guardrails were established. And as far as we can tell at this point, no great tangible progress was made. Although it's, again, they're speaking, and that's far better than mutual silence.
Mr. Daly, what might those guardrails have been? Because Joe Biden said he wanted common sense ones. They weren't set in these particular talks. But what could they be?
Right. Joe Biden spoke of common sense. Xi Jinping spoke of being pragmatic. But what we're really talking about here is Taiwan. And the problem is that neither side accepts the other's security concept. China is not going to back down from its willingness to use violence to bring Taiwan into its fold. And the United States right now is committed to showing support for Taiwan in various ways, which China will not accept. The one China policy has been the formula which for 40 years has helped the two sides to navigate what is basically an ambiguous and perhaps irresolvable situation. But the one China policy is now seen somewhat differently in the United States, and China under Xi Jinping seems more determined to bring Taiwan within its fold. And that we don't have any guardrails that are going to really contain that absolutely. And there is a fundamental difference of views here. And so I don't think either side got the other to accept its views of the Taiwan Strait last night.
What happened to strategic ambiguity from the US's front? That used to be the position that they would take. Biden administration and Joe Biden himself seems to be a bit stronger on this.
Strategic ambiguity is still the United States policy. And this is the idea that we will not promise that we will defend Taiwan should China move on it kinetically, should they launch an invasion or a blockade. We do not want to embolden Taiwan to declare independence by telling Taiwan that we will support it. And we don't want to embolden China to invade by saying that we won't. And that is still the official policy. But within that framework, the United States clearly, beginning under President Trump, but now under President Biden, is determined not to be as sensitive to all of Beijing's sensitivities as it has been in the past. And we are also determined to thwart, within the framework of the one China policy, Beijing's attempts to isolate, to harm economically, and to threaten the people of Taiwan. So this is new. The United States has, if you will, pushed a pawn under the one China policy. China has not accepted that. And that's where we were before the meeting last night. That's where we remain.
So ultimately, this is a meeting of two very powerful men, two superpowers. And Mr. Xi did come to the summit in a strong position politically, Mr. Daly. The White House would argue that Joe Biden also came to that meeting with a strong hand. How much of a role will domestic pressures play in just determining the trajectory of these bilateral ties going forward?
They'll play a very strong role, as they always have. Xi Jinping's position coming out of the Sixth Plenum is obviously very strong within China. He is now functionally leader for life. Propaganda is strengthening the message that he is the core leader and that only under his leadership can China progress. There's something of a cult of personality. And there also appears to be, as far as we can tell, without polls and without votes, quite a bit of support for Xi Jinping. So he's strong domestically. Joe Biden, obviously less strong domestically. America remains extremely divided. But his influence, his diplomacy, his leadership on the world stage is more welcome than that of Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping has strengthened his position domestically, but harmed it internationally, where all polling shows a decrease in support for China. So I think there's roughly a balance in the positions of strength of the two leaders. But President Biden is facing two elections, 2024, in which he is worried that Republicans will attack him for being weak on China. If there is any nuance or subtlety or even attempt to compromise, cooperate, or manage well this relationship. We know less about Xi Jinping's domestic pressures. It's a black box. But we know that historically that the Communist Party does have disagreements. It has had factions of a sort. And so Xi Jinping has to continue to project the message domestically that he's extremely strong and won't back down. And so that is also going to make it very difficult to put up guardrails. Both men are constrained.
So given these constraints then from both sides, how do you see this relationship moving forward? Will there be areas of collaboration? We've seen small steps when it comes to climate change, but what about trade?
The climate change piece has been, there's a new announcement that they will cooperate, but to date that really means parallel action, not real cooperation. On trade, the Trump-era tariffs against China remain in place. Many American companies and industrial groups oppose those tariffs because Americans pay for them. But I don't think that there's space for President Biden to remove those tariffs unless China gives something tangible, probably in the form of drawing down support for its state-owned enterprises. And Xi Jinping shows no sign of doing that. He's moving in the opposite direction. And so even though trade volumes actually remain very high, especially American services to China and Chinese goods to the United States, despite the tariffs, I don't expect to see movement on lifting those tariffs anytime soon.
All right, Ray, thanks for your thoughts. This evening, Robert Daly, director of the Kissinger Institute on China in the United States and the Wilson Center.